Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have a look at the latest from the live radar, run through the UKV, have a look at the precipitation and the temperature over the next 5 days, as it does look likely we will be turning eventually drier towards this weekend. We've got still some very unsettled weather before the weekend and probably after next weekend, or this upcoming weekend. It does look likely we're going to be turning very unsettled once again. The higher pressure that could be building in this weekend, or looking likely to build in this weekend, will be moving away, and it does look likely the westerly winds will return. There is a bit of a caveat in the longer term, as we'll see on the GFS, GM, Eastern DF, and the ensembles. It does look likely that over the Arctic we'll see a bit of blocking developing towards the second half of the month. Nothing too significant at this stage, but it's enough to potentially push the jet stream slightly further southwards, and it means we're more on the colder side of the jet, so we're below average in terms of temperatures, and we are even more unsettled being towards the centre of the lows, which are generally towards Iceland and southern Greenland this time of year. So it could send us colder and more unsettled in the longer term towards the second half of November. So that is something we need to keep an eye on in the longer term. And of course, as we've seen in our winter look ahead, that blocking could develop further through the end of November into the start of December, but we're yet to see that sort of become concrete within the short range models. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well. The link's in the description. Now last night, as we saw in the video, we did have a big squall line that moved through, very unsettled, stormy conditions. That has now cleared, and we're in a colder, fresher air mass. Again, it's not ridiculously cold, it's generally still around average this time of year, but it is colder air mass. And you can see we've got a lot of heavy, thundery showers potentially packing in at the moment. You can see some very small little cells within it of torrential rain. And over areas, especially in the west, where we had the yellow warnings yesterday over saturated ground, we could see some more further flooding issues. Again, these showers will rattle in off this southwesterly wind, but they will continue throughout the day, especially in the south and the west. You will keep seeing them really, which is a little bit unfortunate, but we can't do much about it. But as I said, towards the weekend, hopefully, it will be turning drier. Now, recording this around 9:30 in the morning, getting in it nice and early, and you can see the temperatures are not too bad, especially in the east, where we're still hanging on to those slightly warmer air masses. But across parts of the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, you can see firmly into the blues now, so more towards low teens, high single digits. But it could be warming up towards the weekend, as we see that high pressure build in, southerly airflows return, and it could mean temperatures get towards the mid-teens once again. Nothing too ridiculous, because it will be heading towards the middle of November, but it could be still really quite warm for this time of year. So we do now go over to the UKV and have a look at what the precipitation and the temperature is showing over the next 5 days. You can see the precipitation heading in at the moment. Heavy thundery showers pushing in pretty much all day, and by the course of this evening they slowly peter out, apart from the far south coast and parts of northern England and Scotland, but generally across central areas they should peter out a little bit. They will continue to pepper that south coast, and potentially even picking up tonight across the southeast through the rush hour morning around 7, 8, 9 a.m. before eventually clearing away. And we just continue to see on and off showers essentially through southern Wales, northern parts of southwest England and northern England as well through Wednesday. But Wednesday should be a generally drier day. Beyond that, as we head into Thursday, you can see plenty of showers still pushing in across parts of Scotland, with a weather front engaging with that, producing some heavier rain, and that eventually does sweep through. And through Thursday afternoon, you can see we are generally not too bad. Lower pressure trying to run into the Atlantic, but we start to get that high pressure influence from the south and the east. So we're seeing cloud and rain trying to push in, but being really quite unsuccessful. By Saturday time, you see that weather front sort of retreating as the high pressure does start to nudge it and push it away. Now you can see this by looking at the pressure. Look at Sunday, higher pressure to our east with a southerly airflow, showing we are going to be seeing warmer, dry condition return, and the upper air temperatures around the mid to high single digits, maybe even touching on 10, 11 degrees at times, maybe through Friday and Saturday, showing quite a warm air mass. Again, wouldn't produce anything too warm because it is the middle of November, but it could produce temperatures in around 15 degrees. If we look at the 2 meter temperatures, you can see today temperatures rising perhaps to around 12 to 14 degrees. Into tomorrow, again, you see those temperatures rising in around that sort of 12, 13, 14 degree range. So again, slightly warmer than average, but nothing ridiculous. And as we head towards Thursday, again, you see the temperatures maybe rising slightly higher, 14, 15 or 16. And again, into Friday, you can see maybe more in some places 15, 16, maybe even 17. And into Saturday, again, chilly overnight, maybe high single digits, mid single digits. Saturday afternoon, again, 14, 15. And you expect something similar into Sunday. But that high pressure is not going to hold on for too long. We're going to get nudged away by the low pressure to the west eventually after a few days of high pressure. And it will go unsettled and most likely colder once again. Now, if we do have a look at that mid to long range, by having a look at the GFS, GEM, ECMWF, and the ensembles, you can see low pressure around at the moment, trying to push in, and eventually you see the high pressure built in towards the weekend. Low pressure trying to nudge it away, and it eventually does by around next Monday, Tuesday time, and big low pressure systems push back in. Now, as I said, look at the Arctic, you get this greens and the blues are split, so a bit of blocking over the North Pole, nothing significant enough to give us anything particularly cold, but it just does shift that jet stream, this black line, further southwards in the centre of lows, and not only but across parts of southern Greenland and Iceland, heading towards Scotland, and we're seeing little daughter lows develop over the UK. That could be a recipe for cold and very stormy conditions potentially. Beyond that, we remain very unsettled, and more low pressure systems get picked up by the jets. And again, the jet stream is shifted slightly further south because of this high pressure towards northern Greenland, the Arctic, Svalbard. And again, we continue to stay very unsettled with low pressure systems running in. Eventually, the high pressure tries to migrate towards the UK, up towards Greenland and Iceland, and that could, in the real longer term, be a recipe for this cold air here that is flooding into Scandinavia to spread into parts of northern Europe. Whether that will head to the UK, we don't know. But that high pressure from the GFS today is definitely migrating towards us. But this is sort of a recurring theme we're seeing where blocking's there, but it never quite comes off. And again, it is something that will only really come into the time frame for around the 15th to 20th onwards. So we've still got a good week to 10 days before there's any chance of anything significant happening at all. So we'll have to keep an eye on it. But for the time being, it looks quite unsettled and stormy, especially into next week. So if you go over to the GM, see how that does compare. Again, very unsettled at the moment. High pressure building into the weekend and continuing. But on that, before eventually we see big lows, and you can see that blocking towards Svalbard. Again, not quite extensive and moving away actually at day 10. So we start to see the jet streams return slightly further northwards, but still a very unsettled theme, perhaps with those centre of the lows slightly further northwards, and we're seeing slightly milder conditions. So again, very subtle shifts, but could produce slightly different conditions towards the surface. If we could go over to the ECMWF, see how that does compare. Again, low pressure running in at the moment, very unsettled. High pressure building in towards this weekend. And then eventually we see big lows. And you see a bit of high pressure towards Greenland, shifting the jet stream slightly further southwards, making us very unsettled. But eventually, in the longer term, all those blues reignite together towards Greenland and northern Canada, and we go very, very unsettled but milder with the wind direction. Instead of coming from more of a northwesterly with a southerly tracking jet, more of a southwesterly. Look at the upper air temperatures, you can see big milder sectors potentially pushing in, instead of the GFS will have had smaller milder sectors. Those sectors would have been further southwards. So again, very small differences in the positioning of the jets can mean we are mild and unsettled or cold and unsettled. So we'll have to see exactly what happens, but I would weigh more towards the cold and unsettled at this point, because if you do have a look at the ensembles, you can see very mild over the next week, apart from the next day or two, but very mild with the high pressure building in this weekend. And then beyond that, it's around the 15th, 16th of November. Turns much more towards the average, maybe below average, slightly above average at times, but much more towards the seasonable norm. So, yeah, I would expect the jet stream to shift slightly further southwards for that. And then again, very unsettled and cold conditions. Again, something to keep an eye on is the dew points. Again, you can see the dew points trending towards freezing, which does mean it is a cold air mass, most likely originating from the Arctic, with those sort of colder dew points. So, yeah, colder air will be moving in, but nothing too significant at this stage. And again, look at the 2 meter temperatures. You can see that trend downwards from around 14, 15 degrees for the next week, down towards 9 or 10 degrees for the final 10 days of November. So definitely a big cool down coming towards the start of next week as that unsettled weather does push in. So if you are anything out, any plans, make sure you enjoy this weekend, because it most likely will be relatively mild, maybe even warm in a few places, and quite dry as well. So it would be quite nice to get out there and do something before we do truly enter into the bleak winter, probably into the start of next week, with very unsettled westerly cold conditions starting to push in. So anyway, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.